What's up, everyone? Up next on the Second Chance podcast is Ken Kunin. And Ken is a very, very cool story. Absolutely someone who has overcome many, many chances in his life. Ken was injured in a football accident in 1970. He was a junior at Cornell University on the football field and has gone on to accomplish many amazing things uh, to the point of becoming a dad. So I can't wait for you to hear that part. Make sure you tune in. Let us know what you think. Leave us a review, and then connect with Ken. He's got a book out. You can hear the Ken Kunken story. Dream of things that never were. So let me know what you think. Look forward to hearing your feedback. Second Chance podcast, and if there's anything, any feedback that you have, we always love to hear it. But let's check out the other stuff. All right, folks, welcome back to the Second Chance podcast. And today's guest, Keith Kunken, he's going to tell you about many second chances. He's just reading the bio. When he first scheduled with me, we connected over the internet. But this is going to be a good one. This is going to be when you feel like you're having your bad day. I feel like Keith's going to be able to give us a really unique perspective. He is a man whose life story is a testament to the power of resilience and determination. In 1970, Ken suffered a devastating injury while playing football for Cornell University, leaving him almost completely paralyzed from the shoulders down. But that didn't stop him. Ken went on to complete not just one, but 4 degrees, including a law degree, and served more than 40 years as assistant district attorney, becoming a deputy bureau chief in Nassau County. It's amazing. Ken's journey is nothing short of extraordinary, proving that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can absolutely control how we respond. Today, Ken is an advocate for people with disabilities, serving on board of directors at the Viscardi Center, an organization dedicated to empowering those with disabilities. He's also an author of inspired memoir, I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Ken Kunin story, published in 2023. Ken, I don't think I can do your introduction any justice. With a man of all your experience in going through the life and living the life that you have. So I'm just excited to turn this conversation over to you. Your story is remarkable, and it's remarkable, marked with resilience and determination, which is what we focus on a lot in the podcast, and the inspiring stuff that I try to do. Can you share what motivated you to keep pursuing your education and career after your injury in 1970?
Thank you, Jeff. I'd be happy to do that. But first, let me just say that I never would have been able to do any of the things that I did without a lot of help from my family and friends, who have always been very supportive, very encouraging, and very helpful in every single way that I could have ever imagined. So, just to respond a little further to your questions, when I was injured and I was in the hospital, I felt like the hospital staff, as well as others, gave me very little hope that I would ever be able to lead a useful, productive, or rewarding or happy life. And it seemed that the best of medical professionals ever thought that I would someday be able to do would be to sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone. Now, I believed I could do a lot more than that, because while I had a significant physical disability, my mind was still intact, and I believed there was a lot I could do if I went back to school and got the best education possible. And as you mentioned, after I got out of the hospital, I went back to Cornell University, where I was at the beginning of my junior year at the time of my injury, and I resumed my studies, where I completed my undergraduate degree, 2 master's degrees, and then I went looking for a job. And I was really surprised that now with basically 3 Ivy League degrees, 2 master's degrees, I still had difficulty finding employment because it seemed like back then everybody felt that I was just too disabled to work. Now, I knew that I could work and make a significant contribution to whatever organization hired me, and I was determined to keep looking for a job until I secured employment. And I was really fortunate to secure employment at Abilities Incorporated, which was part of what was then called the Human Resources Center and is now called the Viscardi Center here on Long Island. And they work for helping people with disabilities not only secure employment, but to get training in appropriate fields, to get education in appropriate areas, including they have a school for people with disabilities all the way up from preschool through high school, right? As well as for placement for people looking for jobs. And I was really fortunate to be employed by them, where I worked as vocational rehabilitation counselor for a little over 2 years. And while I was working there, and I loved the work I was doing, I felt that there was still even more that I could do. So I decided to go to law school. And I left the center, went to law school, and upon graduation, I worked at my dream job as an assistant district attorney for more than 40 years. So I've been really fortunate with the way my education and career has turned out.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I want to know a little more about football. Um, Obviously, somewhere along the lines, we're talking 1970, but you're playing collegiate football at you're at Cornell, right?
Right now, I was fortunate at Cornell. They were actually part of a league that back then was called the 150-pound league or lightweight football. It's now called sprint football.
Got it.
And that was for athletes who were a little smaller in size than the typical varsity heavyweight team. So in the league that I was in, you had to do a weigh-in 2 days before each game and be under 154 pounds to play in that league. They've since increased the weight to, I believe, 172 pounds.
Yeah.
But you found most of the people playing in that league played varsity football in high school and were very good athletes and usually pretty fast for their size, but just smaller than most of the heavyweight team. So it was a very competitive league, and I got hurt playing in a game against Columbia University.
Do you have memories of that? Does that linger with you? Your injury? Were you hurt on the field? What does that look like, kid?
Well, I got hurt making a tackle on a kickoff. And as soon as I tackled the ball carrier, I felt like an electric shock shoot through my body, and I instantly became paralyzed over basically my entire body. And I remember lying on the field and really not knowing what was happening to me. I mean, I was conscious, but I didn't understand why I couldn't move. And it was just a total mystery. I didn't know a thing about spinal cord injuries back then.
Yeah, no,
And nobody had actually explained to me what a spinal cord injury actually was. So I was lying there and, the doctors asked me, what's happening, what's going on. And I told them, I really don't know. I just can't move. So quite a shock.
yeah. No, 'cause you're talking 1970. I even, injury wise, since we've progressed so much in my time, but just know, and I use the example, my grandma at 86, my grandmother leading up to 86, 84, 85, she had dementia and Alzheimer's, and I grew up in a rural area. Nobody knew what that was. So when you look at just trying to treat in general, um, knowing what that spinal injury was, is I can see that being a lift. You're in school, this is working on your first degree. Am I right on that, kid? When you
Right.
get,
Just started my junior year in
yeah.
college. I was majoring in industrial engineering, and it was only a few weeks into my junior year that I was injured.
What, and just for the sake of, I can close, you and I can close this out. Like, man, just amazing story. When you're laying on that field in the weeks, few months that lead into that, where are you at? Where's Keith at in 1970? A few months into your junior year, and life just changes, and it changes very abruptly to you in a time when we don't have the medical resources, and don't have us access to motivational content. But where do you go at that point in time, Ken? Are you like, I'm going to beat this, just get out of the way, or do we kick the can?
It's really difficult to think back to what things were like back in 1970 in dealing with the medical profession. And just to tell you a little bit more, Jeff, about the care that I was receiving then, when my family consulted with a specialist about my condition shortly after my injury, he told them that I probably wouldn't survive the week. The doctor said that if I was somehow able to survive, my life expectancy would be between 5 and 9 years, that I would have no movement, I would not be able to do anything, and would probably end up living that time in a nursing. And the doctor actually said to my family, if he were my son, I would just let him go. That was the attitude back then. Now, I was fortunate that my family obviously didn't listen to the doctor and believed there was still a lot that I could do. And they supported me every step of the way, basically assuring me that they'll act as my arms and legs to make sure I could still do everything I wanted to do.
Did you, and I want to paint a picture for our listener, did you believe that what that doctor said? Did you like, all right, this is over? Where are you at? Where is your mind after this happens within the first few weeks and months that's there? I'm going to beat this? I'm going to win? Or do you go through a phase or whatever? Is there
Well, initially, of course, my family didn't share with me what the doctor had said. In fact, the doctor was telling me very little about my condition. They didn't even tell me that I injured my spinal. All I knew for weeks is that I broke my neck. Now, my understanding was, well, if you have a broken neck, once they fix the break in your neck, you'll be back up on your feet. Obviously, that didn't happen. And as weeks and weeks went by, I kept asking questions and received very little feedback from the medical profession. And finally, I was able to get hold of a booklet in the rehab facility where they described injuries such as mine. And they described it based on the level you were hurt in your spine. Now, I'm hurt between the fourth and fifth cervicals in my neck. And when I looked at this pamphlet, and I had somebody needing to turn the pages for me because I couldn't do it myself, they gave a description of what type of movement you would have. And it's very little movement. I have a little bit of movement in my left shoulder and my arm, but nothing in my fingers or wrist. And my right side, I could shrug my shoulder a bit. And they described that in the booklet very accurately. And they had an indication of what type of sensation I would have. And I only have sensation a few inches below my shoulders and up. And that pamphlet described that very accurately. And the pamphlet described how it would affect my bodily functions, how it would affect my breathing and my bladder and my bowel control. And it was very accurate. And then they had a page on what type of careers I could pursue. And the only thing I saw was that someday I may be able to sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone. That's the basis of knowledge that I had to work.
Ken, since real quick, I got a bunch of questions for you, but I just want to know, have you gone back and rewritten that pamphlet yet?
Well, I haven't rewritten the pamphlet, but I go back and speak to the people at the
Yeah.
institute. As it turned out, I had the opportunity after I started working at the district attorney's office, after I worked for a while, to actually be admitted to the United States Supreme Court as an attorney. And I could remember sitting before all 9 justices on the United States Supreme Court when I was being admitted and thinking to myself that the next day I had been asked to be one of the speakers at the 50th anniversary celebration of the rehab facility that I had been a patient 26 years early. And I couldn't wait to tell them about my day in the Supreme Court and to tell them how important it was to keep their expectations high.
Yeah.
Because people's performance often rises and falls based upon what others expect. And it's so important that they keep their expectations high for their patients, as well as people themselves to keep expectations high for what they can accomplish. And that's a message that I wanted to get across to everybody that I come in contact.
Yeah, because if you just read pamphlets, you and I probably wouldn't be talking. You'd been selling door-to-door magazine subscriptions somewhere and living the life that pamphlet told you needed to live.
Absolutely. But I might add, at that time, not only couldn't I write, I couldn't even turn the pages of the pamphlet.
I will say your magazines, you got to read it yourself, right? So but I think there's a story within itself of just your mindset of how that hit. And you're not going to, I'm not going to be what you're telling me I'm going to be. I'm going to go on and do these amazing things. And like, you've earned 4 college degrees, which is by far impressive. But what role did education play in your personal recovery and just your development? What did that? Are we having this determined I'm going to go do this, or was it interesting? What did you tell me about it? Why did that give you your purpose you were looking
I have to say that I got to go back to my family. Basically assure me there's still a lot I can do. And I knew that while I was so severely physically limited, in order for me to have any chance of being successful, I had to make the most of my mental abilities. I knew I needed to return to school and get the best education. So to me, it wasn't much of a choice. I knew I had to do this in order to have any chance of being successful. And I was fortunate that I had a lot of encouragement from my family and friends to do exactly what I did.
That's awesome. Where's your 1970-ish? Now we're approaching into the 75, probably. What? Just for our listener, and I grew up. My stepdad has been on crutches since '74, so I know about ADA compliant a little more than some folks do. But we're during this time, it's a lot of your businesses and facilities are not exactly these masterpieces of ADA compliance now. What kind of unique challenges did that present to you while you're trying to get your education?
I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff. By ADA, I just want to make sure everybody realizes you're referring to the Americans with Disabilities. All right. One of the reasons why I mentioned that is I worked as an ADA on Long Island as an assistant district attorney. But the Americans with Disabilities Act has made an incredible change in so many people's lives. And that was actually signed into law around 1990 with, changes in terms of making facilities more accessible to people with disabilities to take place around 1992. Well, I went back to school in the fall of 1971.
Yeah.
And at that time, when I went back to Cornell, it was basically totally inaccessible. I mean, Cornell is located in upstate Ithaca, New York, on a very hilly terrain. And just about every one of its buildings had steps in front. And when I went back to Cornell, there was not one ramp or curb cut on the entire campus. One of the classes that I took, which met 3 times a week, was located in a building that had 16 steps in front of it. And my dorm room was in a building that had 10 steps just to get in. So on my first day of classes, I had to be either pulled up or bounced down close to 100 steps just to attend my first day. So I have to add, I had a lot of help from my personal care attendants and my fellow classmates because I couldn't use my electric wheelchair. I had to be pushed and pulled and, pulled up and down steps everywhere that I went. It's made a huge difference, the Americans with Disabilities Act. I've been up to Cornell since, and now there are ramps and accessible buses everywhere that you go. What a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking 20 years. 20 years before that, for the ADA law is,
Right.
if you, man, that's its own resilience. That's its own, man, and to get 4 degrees and to work through all that. When we say 4 degrees, we got a law degree. Then what's your other?
Okay, I completed my undergraduate degree in engineering at Cornell. Then I got a master's of arts at Cornell in education. But then I continued my graduate education at Columbia University, the school I got hurt against, where I got a Master of Education degree in psychology. And I worked for a couple of years and then went to Hofstra University's law school. Now, Hofstra is located on Long Island. And I might add, Hofstra was one of the few schools back then that actually was relatively wheelchair accessible. And part of that was thanks in part to Dr. Henry Viscardi Jr., the founder of the Viscardi Center where I later worked, who was active in making that school more wheelchair accessible. What a difference going to Hofstra after I struggled with the steps at Cornell. Hofstra was well set up back then, but I didn't go there until I started there in 1979, 9 years after my injury.
Yeah.
But it was quite a difference because that was still well before the Americans with Disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I grew up mid-70s, but I was a little baby, right? But I remember, I can start remembering 79, 80-ish is when and 78 a little bit, depending on who I'm talking with, what aunt or uncle, but I just knew what times are like back then for myself.
Right. Well, I went to law school 1979 to 1982. So again, well before the Americans with Disabilities.
We don't have, in 70, that whole time period, we don't have the transportation in place that we do now. Our
No.
vehicles,
No.
and just I'm trying to paint that young person. I'm talking to kids right there. Right? I'm just trying to let them know, like, this kid is absolutely trailblazing his way through this thing. Because even just transportation and vehicles, it's
Well, for years, I couldn't get on a bus or a train.
Yeah.
I had to be lifted out of my wheelchair like a sack of potatoes and try to cram me into the seat of a car without bumping my head, which almost always happened when they were doing it, which was really, really difficult. And then, of course, folding up my manual wheelchair because you couldn't take an electric wheelchair.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult going anywhere back then. Now, with the Americans with Disabilities Act, buses have been made accessible. There are taxis that have been made accessible. Trains have been made accessible. What a difference. Even airplanes now are trying to accommodate people with disabilities. It's a huge difference.
Yeah. Just, the determination and just to move through those phases. That's what, like, I'm sitting here just in amazement talking to you because I know, from these eyes looking out, but what you've experienced is just so unique during a time. as well. But it takes you on, Ken. You're a nationally certified rehabilitation counselor now. What insights do you gain from working with individuals that face severe disabilities? How does that help shape your perspectives?
I've seen that there's so much people can do, and that it's important for employers to realize that they've got to look past the disability. I was very fortunate when I applied for a job with the district attorney's office, that the district attorney at the time, a person by the name of Dennis Dillon, was a very progressive, forward-thinking, self-confident district attorney who based his hiring decisions on my abilities rather than my disability. I mean, Dennis Dillon seemed to know that when I went in front of a jury, they weren't going to base their verdict on my inability to walk, but rather on my skill and competence as an attorney. And it's so important for employees to look past the disability, look at what skills are important to do the job an applicant is applying, and see then the benefits of hiring somebody with a disability who has the desire and motivation to make something of themselves, to give them the opportunity to show what they can do. And they'll find that people with disabilities are often the most productive, hardworking, positive people they're ever going to meet. And it just makes good business sense to hire an otherwise qualified individual who just happens to have a disability.
How does your personal experience influence your approach as a prosecutor?
Well, Jeff, let me tell you that when I was working as a prosecutor, shortly after I started doing trials in our district court bureau, I was approached by a defense attorney who told me he overheard some of the prisoners talking about me in the pens behind the court. And apparently what they were saying was that I was a really tough ADA, assistant district attorney, and they hoped they didn't get the guy in the wheelchair as their prosecutor, because I had a reputation of being a very strong prosecutor, a very tough advocate when I was in the court. But I want to go a step further and tell you that when we work in the district attorney's office, the office had a policy that when you leave the office, you go through an exit interview. And in the exit interview, you usually ask what was the best parts of your job, what were the parts that you liked the least or could be changed. And I was surprised and pleased that I was often told that after a number of people did their exit interviews, when they were asked what was the best part of their jobs, they described meeting, working with, and getting to know me. And I don't say that to boast or brag. I know they weren't talking about meeting or working with Ken Kunken.
Yeah.
They were talking about meeting, getting to know, and working with a person with a significant disability. Because other than with close relatives, people often didn't come in contact with somebody with such a severe disability. And they were surprised to see that for the most part, I had a positive attitude, was a hard worker, and I think what may have been most important to them, it didn't mean any additional work for them. I was actually more productive than most of the people I was working. And that was a revelation to many. And I think the more people come in contact with people that have disabilities, they're going to realize that, for one, we're no different than anybody else in terms of what our feelings are, our opinions are, what our likes and dislikes, what we want to accomplish, and that we are productive members of society just like everybody else.
It's hard for that defendant, or that person who's there on charges, to use some of the normal woe is me type arguments against it.
Absolutely.
It's it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to bring that up with you. I think that's really cool to hear that as folks are, when you look at the impact that you left, not only in the just criminal justice system itself, but with with that staff and the people that got to know you and the people that you inspired through your work. That's huge. And you mentioned you can't always control what happens, but you can control how you react. Um, is there a specific moment when this mindset helps you overcome significant obstacles beyond where you are now? Did you get to apply that mindset over and over again?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I would love to be able to stand up out of this wheelchair and walk around and do so many things that I used to do for myself. That's out of my control. But what I can control is what my mindset is every day, how I feel about myself and about life, and what I can do with my life. And that's why I knew it was important for me to be productive, to go back to school, get the best education I can, to work hard at a job and show that I can do the work. And Jeff, I might add that I also found there's a lot I could do with my personal. Right? It wasn't just education. It wasn't just work. It was, I still wanted to do a lot of the things that I would have done had I not been injured, right? I wanted to go out, be with people, do enjoyable activities. And one of those activities was dating. I mean, just like any other young man, I wanted to have a life where someday I would meet the perfect woman for me, right? And enjoy a wonderful personal life. And as you might imagine, dating when you're a quadriplegic and trying to impress a woman when you're almost totally paralyzed poses its own unique set of challenges. But I was fortunate that I met the perfect woman for me. Her name is Anna. And it obviously took me a while before I met that perfect woman. But Anna and I fell in love and we got married in 2003. So we've been married now for more than 21 years. But my story gets even better because when we talked about getting married, Anna told me that she wanted to have my baby, not just a baby, my baby, which at the time really sounded impossible because at that time I had been paralyzed for more than 30 years and I was already in my 50s.
So say you're in your 50s.
Well, there's an expression in the military that I've always liked, and it's the difficult we do it once, the impossible takes a little longer. Well, we were determined to make the impossible happen, and we decided we wanted to do it sooner rather than later. So we looked into various options, including in vitro fertilization, and were very excited and surprised to learn that it still might be possible for someone in my condition to father a child. So we pursued in vitro, and it wasn't long before Anna's desire of having my baby not only became my desire, it became our quest. And we pursued in vitro, and through the miracle of science, Anna became pregnant. And on January 24th, 2005, I was present in the delivery room.
Oh, man.
I was present in the delivery room when my wife Anna gave birth to triplets. Triplets. We have
Are you kidding me?
we have three incredible boys, Joey, Jimmy, and Timmy. They now just began their sophomore year in college. They're at three different schools, and they're doing absolutely great and are incredible kids. One of our boys is a freshman at State University of New York, Morrisville, studying renewable energy. One of my boys is at Syracuse, pursuing a career in communications and journalism. And the third one, Joey, 50 years after I graduated from Cornell, started attending Cornell.
Great.
And he's in his Sophomore year, hoping to major in mechanical engineering.
Man, for folks that you wouldn't know this, Anna's sitting right out there. She's actually with us.
Yes, to my right.
Yeah, she's sitting right on camera, listening to this. Man, that's all right. So, a lot of times when you look at mental health and when you look at just what people do, their actions, and sometimes when people hit rough patches, the first thing that comes to mind is they want to, they off themselves are going to, suicide their way out of this bad situation or whatever. And that's where my mind goes with this. That was never an option for you. And when you look at the legacies, even, hey, and it's, you've got these three boys that have grew up with you, that have opened doors, that have done this, all the things. And I know that from just helping coach that, right? But I know not to the degree that they have, but the inspiration that you give them is just crazy. I'm sure. Do they play football, Ken?
No, that was something that was never an option. They were not going to play football. But I might add that all three pursued martial arts. They're all martial artists, and they're all second-degree black belts in the martial art Taekwondo, and they've all been studying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. So they are very athletic, not playing football, but active in the martial arts and doing absolutely great. The three nicest, most wonderful kids you could ever imagine.
Man, I'm a proud dad, proud mom, and probably some super proud boys hearing this.
Yeah. In fact, they were even instructors at the martial arts academy with it.
That's an amazing tip of the iceberg, or tip of the top. It's a tip of the spear, not tip of the iceberg, but the tip of the spear moment for your accomplishments. I had a couple things in my head where I thought we were going, but I wasn't thinking triplets, right?
Neither was I.
Yeah. How is that? Tell me about that, Jen. So, all right. So, Anna, all right. Maybe we ought to hear from Anna on this part, but how is that when she comes home and is like, hey, we're going, you're going to be a dad. And you're like, oh, this is my dad. And she's like, there's more. How does that go?
Well, I got to tell you, I was present with her during virtually all of her doctor's appointments. So I was present when we went for the first sonogram, and I saw 1, 2, 3.
Oh my goodness.
Embryos that are going to be my 3 sons, right, in the sonogram. So I was right there when it happened. And it was interesting because both Anna and I have a brother and a sister, and we're both very close to our relatives. Our siblings are so important to us. And when we talked about Anna going through in vitro, we both agreed that because we were so close to our siblings, our child should really have a sibling. So we had talked about, having more than one. And I remember going through in vitro and thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great if we had twins? So we wouldn't need to go through this whole process a second time. And lo and behold, we go for that sonogram and we see we were blessed with triplets.
Yeah.
What could be better than that? We've been so fortunate.
Man, it's amazing. That is just a very, very powerful moment there. I appreciate you sharing that with me. That is such a...
Jeff, I have to add, you've mentioned a number of my degrees and accomplishments. And when people ask me what accomplishments I am most proud of, without a doubt, it's being a good husband and father.
Yeah.
Those are the accomplishments I am most proud of, and will always be most.
Yeah, I lead into that one as well when folks ask me. First off, I'm a dad. That's a great title, and I don't I want people to realize that, right? I mean, I think it's a big deal. You're, um, there's a lot of power that comes with that title, the dad too. That, well, how does triplets give us an idea in 2005? What does triplets look like coming home from the hospital? Help, you got family, you got all those things, you got three, you got.
You know, when you say, what does it look like? One of the things was, how are we going to get them home from the, I have a minivan that my wife drives, but it was really difficult trying to fit 3 car seats into our van. Now, triplets are usually born prematurely, as ours were, and they were in the NICU for, close to 4 weeks, each of them, and they came home on separate days. So we initially were able to take one home at a time, but eventually we needed 3 car seats to fit into my minivan, along with obviously me and my wheelchair, which takes a lot of room. So that was one of the first challenges. But my wife, Anna, is also my caregiver. Now, she has only 2 arms and is caring for 3 little babies and me. I talk about a challenge, but fortunately, I'm married to a Wonder Woman who was absolutely super and could do virtually everything. I've never met anybody like her before. And it's been a challenge, but a great challenge. I mean, what could be better than having these 3 incredible boys and my wife and my own?
Yeah,
I'm really fortunate.
absolutely. And you're right. She has got all the superpowers rolled into one there to be able to manage all that. I have 2 kids, born separately, 2 years apart, and so I have not experienced nowhere near to the lift that you all have. Um, the only question I think I'm trying to think about what my wife would ask is like, did Adam know that twin or triplets might be a possibility, or did that run in y'all's families?
Actually, my wife has my sister has identical twins. But being that we went through in vitro, it was not a question of whether it ran in our family. We were just incredibly fortunate that we had 3 embryos that were viable. The doctor suggested we implant all 3 with the hope that maybe one would take.
I got.
And fortunately, all 3 took. And we just couldn't be happier. And all
Thank
4
you for explaining
out right away.
how that works, Ken. Um, I needed a moment there for you to explain that. I got you now.
Yeah. And all 3 boys are fortunately very healthy, very active, very bright, and very helpful to all of us, to me as well as, to my wife, and just great, great young men.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that with me, but you're still doing a lot of work with the Viscardi Center, is that right?
Right. I've been fortunate. I left the Viscardi Center in 1979 to go to law school. And I was really pleased and surprised when 30 years after I left, I received a call from the president of Abilities, Inc., which was one of the corporations that make up the Viscardi Center, asking me to be on their board of directors. And I very proudly accepted. And since 2009, I've been on the board of directors first at Abilities, Inc., and beginning in 2017, on the board of directors of their parent company, the whole Viscardi Center. I've been on their board of directors. And I am so proud to remain active in that center. And I might add that my cousin, Roy Danis, who has been so helpful throughout my injury and recovery in helping me do things, took such an interest in the Viscardi Center. He's now chairman of the board of directors. So it's a family affair.
Yeah.
And they're just a great, great facility. I encourage people to Google them and look up the Viscardi Center. It's spelled V as in Victor, ISCARDI, and look at what an incredible place the Viscardi Center is.
we'll make sure that we, or I will make sure that we include that contact information in our show notes. And
Thank you, Jeff. And I might add that I've been very fortunate to have had the opportunity, with help from my wife, to write a book about my life. And you can see it behind me on the bookshelf, on the shelf, called I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Ken Kunin story. And, if people want to learn more about my life, they can read that book, which obviously it tells them everything about my life.
how
It's
can we?
available on Amazon.
What's the best place? Tell us all. Tell the listeners. What's the best word? Where's the best place to find it?
Oh, what they can do is they can go to my website,
Yeah.
which is kenkunken.com, and it indicates where you can purchase my book. Now, most people purchase it through Amazon, but if they're going to order it in bulk, they can go directly to the publisher and get a special reduced price if they're ordering it in bulk. So if they go on my website, kenkunken.com, they'll see the best place to order the book. But it's also available in a Kindle form. So whether it's Kindle or hardcover, they can purchase.
Yeah, we want to make sure that that folks can connect with you. So website, best way to connect.
Right. That would be best.
Yeah.
And my email number is really the best thing. It would be to go to the website.
Yeah.
That would be the best place.
Yeah, that's. I'll make sure that we include those your backlinks and your website links in our show notes and publish that on our socials as well. So folks,
Thank you, Jeff.
yeah,
And I might just want to add where I got the title of my book.
Yeah.
When I was still in the rehab center, I had the opportunity to testify before a United States Senate Health Subcommittee chaired by Senator Edward Kennedy. And 8 days after my testimony, Senator Kennedy sent me a glass paperweight in the mail that had an inscription on it that the senator said his late brother Robert Kennedy liked very much. And those words have always been very meaningful to me. And the inscription read, "Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream of things that never were and say why not." That's why I got the title of my book, I Dream of Things That Never Were.
Man, yeah, this is. I can't. I'm going to pick that book up myself. But we're coming up on. I have one question left, and you actually worked through a bunch of them just in our conversations, right? But I have one. Um, I have one, and I think it will. I think it's a great question to kind of end with, just where we are, and for the folks that are listening here, if you're gonna hear something, you're like, why didn't Jeff ask him this? Well, message, let me know. I'll get Ken back on here, and to further the conversation and for things. But you also can go to his website and connect directly with him. But like I tell a lot of folks, if it's a question for the greater good, then let's do it. Let's get it out there. But here's what I was what I kind of saying for the last. And looking back at your journey, what advice would you give to others facing seemingly insurmountable challenges in their own lives?
Well, it's a few things. One, never give up. But two, as I said before, keep your expectations high. There's an awful lot you can do, right, with, what you do have to work with, whether it be your physical abilities, your mental abilities, that there's still a lot you can do with your life. But three, if you have the support of your family, friends, there is so much you can do together, helping each other, succeed. It makes an enormous difference. And as I indicated before, while you cannot always control what happens to you, you can control how you react. That's still within your control. You need to take advantage.
It's good advice, everybody. If you're struggling, if you're in a if you'll go back to the last 45 seconds and put it on repeat.
Thank you. And Jeff, if I could add one more thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've received so much help in my life since my injury, but what's given me the best feeling is when I've had the opportunity to help others. That's made a big difference. When I had the opportunity to work at the Viscardi Center, where now I was giving back and helping others, that made me feel so much better about myself. It increased my self-esteem, my feelings of self-worth, and my self-confidence. And that enabled me to leave and then go to the law school and work as an assistant district attorney. And helping others has always been paramount in my life. That's made a huge difference in how I feel about myself. And I think that's important for everybody to understand how important and how beneficial that is when you can help other people. It makes you feel so better.
I'm not going to disagree with that one, Ken. Not at all. I was raised in helping people. And that's just something that I've always enjoyed doing is having that purpose in my life of helping people. So I can't do that enough. On what, if anything else, if you're losing purpose, you can always get up tomorrow and go help someone. I think there's a lot to be said. I want to ask you real quick. What else do you have on tap this week? Got more podcasts, more books? What is it? What's the plan?
Well, actually, as we're talking, I'm actually just recovering from COVID.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I'm still working on that and getting my strength back. But in another couple of weeks, I'll be going up to Cornell, where I've been asked to serve on the Cornell University Council. So we have a meeting up there, and I'll be up there for the meeting in mid-October. I'll actually be doing a book signing up there for my book while I'm up there. And I'll get to visit with my 3 boys because while one goes to Cornell, the other 2 are not far away, one in Syracuse, one at State University of New York at Morrisville, are all relatively near Cornell. So I'll get to visit with all 3 of my sons while I'm up there. So that's the next thing on my agenda.
Well, that's good. I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, for not giving up, for pushing through, for breaking barriers, anything that you want to put in there. I can't thank you enough for creating your book and that messaging that you have. That just if you're still, say this, Ken, if you're waking up and you can take a breath, you can make a difference. And whether that's in your life or someone else's. So I can't thank you enough for sharing this story with me today. And I can't wait to just get this out and get your book out and all the things that I can do just to help amplify your message. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity you've given me to share my story with people. Thank you. It was great meeting and talking with you as well.
And Kunken.